everyone. Thank you all so much for being here for our second Ray Summit. This has been an amazing year for Ray. We've seen tremendous growth in the community, in developers and companies contributing back to the open source project. We have over 480 contributors, and we're seeing more and more companies building internal teams to invest in Ray. One of the things that makes Ray special, and where we've seen a lot of growth, is its library ecosystem. And we've seen a ton of investment in this ecosystem. As a reminder of how the ecosystem ties in, Ray is a universal framework for distributed computing. It's very general. And that generality is important for supporting this rich library ecosystem, everything from training to production serving to data processing. And of course, by running these libraries on top of Ray, you can use them together and build applications that do all of these things. And if you use Ray, then you can run your applications anywhere, on any cloud provider, on Kubernetes, or on your laptop. And each of these components adds value for the users of the other components. So what's new with the ecosystem? Since our last summit, there's been a ton of effort to ensure that the best libraries for machine learning run on Ray, and that Ray is the best way to scale these libraries. XGBoost is one example, and you'll hear at this summit how Uber has sped up training by 5x by deploying XGBoost on Ray. You'll also hear how deploying Horovod on Ray has allowed them to consolidate their deep learning and traditional machine learning stacks. By deploying on Ray, all these libraries can immediately leverage Ray's elasticity, autoscaling, and hyperparameter tuning. And that's how Ray is helping to bring common infrastructure to the production ML ecosystem. Another example is Dask, which has a great library for data processing. Amazon has managed to speed up an important Dask workload by 13x by deploying Dask on Ray. They were able to scale to clusters 7 times larger, and the end-to-end job cost only 30% of the original, saving over $500,000 per job. And of course, the real benefit of Ray is that these libraries do not exist in isolation, but that they can be used seamlessly together in a common application. With all of these examples, we've seen that Ray is becoming the tool of choice for scaling libraries. Beyond the ecosystem, this year, we've seen Ray being used for applications far beyond where we were just 1 year ago. One of the biggest shifts is a focus on online production use cases. We have an incredibly broad user base, and you'll hear from every single one of these companies at the summit. And their use cases are equally broad. You'll hear about how they're using Ray to build scalable infrastructure for financial services, to optimize recommendations and in-app purchases, to do large-scale machine learning on aerial imagery, and more. Later today, you'll hear how McKinsey and Quantum Black partnered with Emirates Team New Zealand and designed the boat in this picture using Ray to do reinforcement learning. And doing that, they won the America's Cup, which is the top competition in sailing. You'll hear how Dendra is using Ray for ecosystem restoration, for providing the compute infrastructure, the training, the inference, and computer vision at a tremendous scale to plant trees. You'll hear from a panel with Uber, Shopify, and Robinhood how they're building machine learning platforms on top of Ray. And the list goes on. There are so many inspirational use cases, and that's what excites us. Thank you all so much for making Ray what it is, for pushing the boundaries, pioneering new use cases, and for building such a rich ecosystem. We wouldn't be here without the community. Now I'm going to transition to saying a few words about some of the development that's happened over the past half year. Last Ray Summit, we released Ray 1.0 and announced an increased focus on maturity and stability. Since then, there's been a huge effort on improving robustness and scalability, ranging from object spilling, that is handling the scenario where your data is way larger than your memory, to improved memory management, and significant scalability testing and benchmarking. If you're curious about the kind of applications that this work has enabled, check out Patrick's talk from Amazon to hear how they used Ray to increase the throughput of data processed to over 1 petabyte per hour, while decreasing costs by 90%. Or check out Hao Chen's talk from Ant Group on how they deploy Ray on over 200,000 cores. We've also put a ton of effort into streamlining some of the workflows for development and production. One important feature is the Ray client. If you're developing on your laptop and you have a Ray driver program running some code, that's great. If you want to scale that program with a cluster, then you have to leave your laptop and take that driver program and run it on some node in the cluster. This might even require you to add a new node to the Ray cluster just to run the driver program. Now with the Ray client feature, instead, you can continue to run the program on your laptop. You never have to leave your laptop. And you can connect directly to the cluster, essentially to extend your laptop with the cluster. Now, because you never have to leave your laptop, you don't have to SSH to the cluster, the development workflow can be way simpler. And this isn't only useful for development. Imagine that instead of your laptop, you want to run a scalable Ray application from your continuous integration testing. Or imagine you want to kick off a Ray application from a web server. Your CI and your web server may not be part of the Ray cluster, but even so, they can still use Ray as if they were, thanks to this feature. This is a powerful feature that I hope you'll try out. Another feature is environments. Suppose I'm connecting to a cluster. Here I'm using the Ray client. This is about solving the question, how do I configure the environment that my application runs in? For example, how do I install the dependencies on the cluster, all the Python packages or Conda environments? How do I sync my code to the cluster? What if the cluster is auto-scaling and new nodes are coming online? What if I have two applications that run on the same cluster but use different libraries or different code, and so on? Well, the answer is that you can just define an environment. Just specify the Python dependencies in a list. They'll be installed on all the nodes. You can also use Conda packages, and those will be installed on all the nodes as well. You can specify where your code lives, and that code will be synced to all of the nodes. And that's it. It just works. Even if the cluster is auto-scaling and new nodes are being added. Even if you have multiple clients running jobs on the same Ray cluster, but using different libraries and code. That's fine. It'll all just work. There's a ton more to this and a lot of ongoing development, but this dramatically simplifies the iteration time and process of configuring your cluster environment. We also have invested a ton in production serving with Ray Serve. We've revamped the API for simplicity and re-architected the system for scalability. And you can check out the talks from Anyscale, Ikigai Labs, and Ant Group on production serving with Ray. It's been a remarkable year, and we will continue to double down on these foundations: scalability and robustness, streamlining the workflows for development and production, and supporting production services and applications. I want to welcome you all to Ray Summit. Thank you for attending and being a part of the Ray community. We have a tremendous lineup of great speakers and topics over the next 2 days, ranging from scalability to reinforcement learning to training to serving and more. So there's lots of great stuff to choose from. The content will be available on demand on our YouTube channel shortly after the event, so don't worry if you miss something. We also have 2 hands-on tutorials on day 3, one on Ray Core and one on reinforcement learning with RLib, which is a great option if you want to go deeper. Finally, a big part of this conference is meeting and connecting with other Ray developers and users. We have a Ray Summit Slack, and there's a networking session right after the break today and tomorrow where you can chat live with other attendees. We hope to see you there. Thank you all so much, and I hope you enjoy the summit.